Red Dwarf with a new cast, a new continuity, and even a new writer? This could either be very good or the other thing. Well, greetings fellow dwarfers, welcome to this very interesting episode looking at the recently announced Red Dwarf Titan prequel show. To get us all up to speed really quickly, a few weeks back, a portion of a video interview with Rob Grant featuring in the Radio Times' website, and we got some really interesting details about this potential show. Let's look at some of the key points from that, and then I'll break down the key points and put some of my own thoughts in there.
It's a prequel to Red Dwarf, set just before the events of the pilot show. It's also one universe to the side. That gives us some leeway in how we can handle things. Basically, Lister and Rimmer are bunkmates already, and they go down for shore leave on Titan. And Titan's like this hideous favela of rundown, dirty, dingy alleyways, hucksters, street traders, criminals. While they're there, they get a warning from some mysterious source, and they have to go off on various escapades to get out of it. Planned as a novel and a TV show. Of course, with the sideways bit means we can recast, so there will be a new cast in the TV show. But we would hope that, and I've spoken to them and they seem keen, the original cast to make, various guest appearances.
So let's break down some of those points really quickly. The one universe to the side idea, actually, I think is kind of genius, because it gives us the idea it's close, it's only one universe off from the one we're familiar with, but it gives him the potential to change what he likes without causing a big upset. I actually think that's kind of genius. That's a great idea. One universe to the side, I think is going to give him some really good potential. Titan being a prequel to Red Dwarf set just before the pilot episode, just before the end. That's a really interesting one to me because I think we've got to consider canon really carefully here. Particularly, I think we're going to have to consider Rob Grant's canon. I think he's going to stick to some canon where he can, but I think he's only going to bother sticking up to the end of Series 6 that he originally wrote for. I don't think any of the Doug era, Series 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth, I don't think any of that is going to count. That's going to be very interesting because a lot of the stuff we consider as established knowledge of our favourite characters, a lot of that goes out of the window. So one comment I had was, we're not going to have Crichton, aren't we? Because Crichton's established date of manufacture, his birth date, if you like, that's pretty much only established in the Doug era.
Tell me when you were created, can you remember?
2340, sir.
But if that's all going out the window, then there is potential for Crichton to be in this show. Think of it, if this is set just before the episode, the end, the guys could go down to this, to Titan. There's nothing stopping them meeting a brand new out-of-the-box Crichton on that planet. Rob might be keeping this up his sleeve that Crichton could be a full-time cast member throughout the whole thing. I mean, in theory, depending how you want to take the aging of Crichton's face and stuff, you could even have it played by Robert Llewellyn. Crichton, you could even do it in the style of David Ross. You could have him in the sort of butler-suited body with the British accent. Other things that got established in the Doug era, Dave era, whatever you want to call it, things like Rimmer's father not being who he thought he was and he's actually Gungo, the gardener's son or whatever, that can all go out the window and his original, who he thought was originally his father, can return. His brother Howard not being a high flyer and actually just being a second tech, that can go out the window. His brother Howard can again be a high flyer. In fact, one of the biggest things for canon, it wasn't established in canon until Series 7, Lister being his own father. That's actually not something Rob Grant necessarily has to stick to. Now, coming back to characters really quickly, we know they're going to be having these adventures on Titan, which is grungy and got gangsters and stuff, which is very much sounding like the opening of the book, Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers. It's very much described pretty much just like that. But in terms of characters, I did have the thought that, okay, the cat is going to be hard to work in. Admittedly, this is set long before the cat race even existed, but a character for comic relief, a character who's a bit dumb and doesn't know much. How about a brand new android who hasn't learned anything yet? The Crichton in this show could be the comic relief. It could switch around. Instead of him being the kind of genius one who knows everything and does all the science, he could be the idiot in this. Of course, I would love to see Danny John Jules somewhere, and Rob said about cast cameos or cast appearances. How about Danny being something like a pet shop owner? selling a certain cat called Frankenstein. It was changed in Series 7 in Ouroboros that Lister didn't buy the cat in Titan. It says there that he bought him on Mimas.
Remember coming back from shore leave on Mimas?
But originally, in the end, and in the comic books, it's Titan he bought the cat on. It's Titan he bought Frankenstein on. So that could be a big part of the plot when you think about it. In fact, that could be the whole point of the plot, is to make sure that Lister buys Frankenstein. It's so important for the cat race. Perhaps that's a major part of the plot. Maybe the message from the future was from the cat. And the last point on sort of original cast appearances, as Rob called it. Yes, we'd love to see the original cast, so we could have, Craig Charles turn up as a future Lister. We could have Chris Barry turn up as a future Rimmer. But they don't have to play their future selves. They could play their alternative selves. Ace Rimmer. Instead of playing Lister, Craig Charles could play Jim or Bexley. He could play his own children. Or they could just play entirely new characters. But also, there's the potential to see some of the supporting cast. Hollister, Kachansky, Peterson. I'd love to see more of Peterson. He's fantastic in the novels. More Peterson would be great. But it also throws up the thought that if Titan is this sort of popular stop-off point for people to have shore leave when on these big ships, these big, huge mining ships, there could be other mining ships docked. It doesn't have to just be Red Dwarf. It could make an amazing skyline. The guys could look up and see the ships in orbit. That would be very cool to see. Maybe some of their adventures are on one of those other ships. They could end up on an empty ship, and that would give us the original Red Dwarf feel of a big empty mining ship. How about Hattie Hayridge being the computer on an alternative ship, on one of the other mining ships? It would be really great to see her on one of the other ships. And of course, we could have Norman Lovett as well. Well, he'd need to be the actual Holly for the actual Red Dwarf that's in orbit. But there's loads of potential for doing stuff with characters old and new. Also, if there's going to be other ships docked, there's the potential for Rimmer to run into one of his brothers as captains of one of those other ships, and that would send his jealousy into overload, and we've got plenty of comedy to come from that. And last but not least, of course, we've got to talk about the casting. It's a new cast. It's got to be a new cast. Rob Slattery said that, which is exciting because he also talked about it needing a new cast, which you wouldn't do with animation. So that kind of, in my mind, confirms that he's writing this wanting it to be live action, which is great. We want live action. We want Red Dwarf to be as high production value, as cool as possible. But a new cast to play young Lister, Rimmer, and whoever, that's going to be tricky. Casting is going to be so crucial to whether this show works, but if they can cast this right, then that'll be really exciting. So that's pretty much all my thoughts. What I want to see from this is, given that it's set before the pilot episode, set before the end, I would love to see it have an early series feel. If they can find a way to make Titan feel a bit desolate, maybe something happens and there's not very many people around, so it's got that kind of lonely feel with mostly just Lister and Rimmer, I would really like that. I'd love some bunk room style scenes. A really early series feel would be great. And as I say, casting's going to be crucial. So guys, what are your thoughts on Red Dwarf Titan? Are you excited? Are you kind of curious but not getting your hopes up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Personally, I'm really excited just to have anything in the pipeline that's Red Dwarf and new. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I've got more in the pipeline. Apologies for taking so long to bring this one out, but I wanted to get my thoughts together really well for you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. All that's left to say is, I'll see you next time, Smegheads. Oh, and like and subscribe. That as well.